the next speaker is I bring Indi, who is an activist who would be speaking on the caste issue. So this caste issue, obviously we can't mention it without it saying that it goes hand in hand with the casteist, sexist, racist attacks by the BJP and RSS's government, and which attacks the ordinary people and in particular people of different faiths who are not Hindus in India, and oppressed castes. It's in particular coming under huge attacks, and caste discrimination is growing in India. I'll bring Indira.
Good afternoon. I'd like to start by thanking the organisers of this event for giving me the opportunity to speak about the Dalit struggle against caste oppression. I know that many of you will be familiar with the caste system and what this term means, but for those who aren't familiar with it, I'm going to summarise what this means. I'm going to attempt to be quite concise because it's such a vast issue and I've got a time constraint. So the caste system is, in South Asia, one of the oldest forms of oppression that exists today, associated primarily with cultures of the Indian subcontinent. However, the term caste itself is not an Indian term. It actually comes from Portuguese casta, meaning race or pure stock. Indians themselves do not have a single term for describing the caste system as a whole, but do have a variety of different terms referring to different aspects of it, the two main ones being Jati and Varna. The Varna consists of 4 categories, each ranked differently in terms of social honour. And below these groupings, there's a so-called untouchable group, or as Gandhi coined the term, Harijans, maybe one of the only things he did for the Dalit community, but that's a different discussion. Or way, as the community has named themselves, the Dalit community. And Jati refers to locally defined groups within which caste ranks are organised. So Jati is coupled with one's occupation, and the meaning of Varna literally translates to colour, although it is used to enforce social stratification and isn't literally taken to mean colour in the context. So, according to the people who practice and promote it, caste is determined by birth and cannot be changed. It's a class-based system where there's in a class-based system there is vertical mobility, but this is denied in a caste-based system. So, you know, once you're born into a certain caste, nothing you will do will ever, remove you from that. So, although untouchability is in practice, it's legally prohibited in practice in India, the Dalit community continues to be shunned socially and economically in both India and in countries to which there is an Indian population. So, largely, each caste continues to exist in a state of social paralysis. Cold-blooded murder, sexual violence, bonded slavery and other forms of horrific discrimination are used against the Dalit community. People challenging this oppression also face brutal violence, including being driven from their homes, arson attacks, forced suicide. I'm sure many of you here will remember during the 90s the brutal attacks led by Ranveer Sena during the 90s in Bihar. Ranveer Sena were an upper caste landlord militia formed by landlords to counter the growing menace of Red Terror in central Bihar, basically to wipe out the Naxalite groups and Communist Party of India in that area, where hundreds of Dalits were murdered. Slightly more recently, the Dharampuri violence in 2012, whereby a high caste girl married a Dalit boy or eloped with a Dalit boy. Her father was so ashamed that he committed suicide, and subsequently a absolutely huge mob torched and burnt down 3 Dalit colonies, and this included around 268 dwellings, over 1,000 people displaced as a result of that. In fact, the most recent story that's made the news of Dalit oppression is just over a month ago, this year on April the 28th. There was the absolutely savage, brutal rape and murder case involving a 30-year-old law student. I believe she just graduated or finished her course about 5 days before this attack happened. But this Dalit woman in Kerala, the case sent shockwaves across the whole community just due to how horrific it was. She was found with 13 stab wounds, intestinal displacement, genital mutilation, absolutely horrific. And despite all of this, there have been allegations of police inaction in the case. I mean, it happened on the 28th of April, and I believe it took a good 4 or 5 days for the police to, fully begin to investigate. So, I mean, that speaks for itself, really. And this isn't an isolated incident at all. Dalit women, statistically are at a higher risk of sexual violence. Studies have shown our women are subordinated in terms of power relations to men in a patriarchal society and against their communities based on caste. Another recent case which I'd like to mention, which I'm sure many of you will be familiar with, is the tragic suicide earlier this year of Rohit Vemula. He was of the Central University of Hyderabad, aged 26. His suicide occurred after a controversy which extended over several months, starting in July 2015 last year. His university had stopped paying him a fellowship of 25,000 rupees a month after he was found raising issues under the banner of the ASA, which is the Ambedkar Student Association. So, as part of their university's disciplinary inquiry, he and other ASA activists were basically expelled from their university for, it all began when they were demonstrating against the death penalty for Yaku Memon, who was associated with the Mumbai bombings, and they also condemned certain actions of the AVBP, who were the right-wing All Indian Student Association affiliated with the BJP. So the AVBP's local leader, someone called Nandanam Sushil Kumar, a series of, I'm trying to sort of sum it up because I don't have a lot of time left, but to sum it up, basically, their local leader publicly, insulted the ASA, I believe, on social media. This led to some kind of argument, confrontation between the two groups. Then the next day, Gumar was taken to hospital and basically, following acute appendicitis, had his appendix removed. And when he came back, he stated that this was, as a result of being roughed up by 40 ASA members. So the AVBP, so the right-wing All Indian Student Organisation, they wrote to the Student Union Minister alleging that the ASA members were indulging in casteist and anti-nationalist activities. This was then forwarded to the uni's Vice-Chancellor, and Rohit Vemula and 4 other ASA members were suspended as a result. And it was after the confirmation of the suspension that Rohit committed suicide. So the tragic death of this politically active young man was in fact institutional murder. He's one of 9 Dalit students who have committed suicide from the University of Hyderabad in a decade. So Rohit considered himself a Dalit Marxist, and it's clear that this incredibly tragic step of taking his own life was done as a protest to ignite a torch of awakening to the vast numbers of oppressed communities in India and beyond. And this is a particularly powerful excerpt from his suicide note that stood out to me personally. The value of a man was reduced to his immediate identity and nearest possibility, to a vote, to a number, to a thing. Never was a man treated as a mind, as a glorious thing made up of stardust, in every field, in studies, in streets, in politics, and in dying and living. And indeed, the torch of solidarity has spread across the country. The horrific caste discrimination within education is being challenged in an unprecedented way, showing the anger of youth against the right-wing education policy of the BJP. Education in India, especially higher education, is increasingly becoming a private sector. This excludes a vast majority of ordinary working people, particularly the Dalit community, who are discriminated against on a community and caste basis, even in lower and secondary education. When Modi visited the UK last year, the Dalit community played a significant role in the demonstration against his visit. So, as Indians have migrated to other parts of the world, the caste disease has travelled with them, and it definitely exists here in the UK, and is absolutely rife in the Asian community here. I'm a member of Caste Watch UK, an organisation campaigning against caste discrimination, and we've lobbied the government to include caste in the Single Equality Bill. So both through being in Caste Watch UK, and just by being a young Asian person growing up within the Indian community, I've witnessed myself and heard secondhand through others' testimonies how how rife it really is. People have testified to have been bullied in the workplace and education on the basis of caste, often with serious consequences, and nothing was done about it due to the wider community misunderstanding what caste discrimination actually is. Part of the mission of Caste Watch UK was to do educational outreach on caste for this reason. Intercaste marriage is a massive issue for British Asians, giving rise to a lot of problems. So, just to sum up, I guess I want to sum up with a question more than a point, and open to the floor when it comes to the discussion. How will caste play a role in the struggle for self-determination within the Tamil-speaking community?